Oh, I should probably add myself. That probably would help. Did you guys hear me ramble? Hopefully you did. If not, it's not important. Welcome to Uncut History. Another Thursday, another stream. I'm just gonna take these off because I'm not listening to anything. How's everybody doing tonight? No, I'm not drinking coffee. Believe it or not, my glass that I normally drink sodas and beer out of, I forgot to take it downstairs and didn't realize it until I was going on stream. So, coffee mug it is. If you happen to hear some background noise, I apologize in advance. We still don't got the ACs in the house yet. They'll be coming here shortly, getting ready for summer, but we're not quite ready to give up yet. So we'll allow Mother Nature to air condition this room this evening. So, today is May 18th, and for like half the week, I was debating what I was going to do. I was thinking, I don't, I want to wait. I want to stagger the preservation shout outs to every other week. And then it dawned on me, oh yeah, May 18th just happens to be the anniversary of a particular noteworthy event in American history. Of course, we're going to be talking about the 1980 eruption of Mount Saint Helens, or as much as a Yinzer can talk about the 1980 eruption at Mount Saint Helens. So please take not just little pinches of salt, please take copious amounts of salt as we begin to talk about this event. Now, being here in Pennsylvania, Mount St. Helens occurs over in the state of Washington. You wouldn't expect me to have a lot of interest in it, but on the contrary, growing up as a kid, one of my favorite films growing up was Dante's Peak. Mention in the chat if you've ever seen Dante's Peak before, starring Pierce Bronson and Linda Hamilton. It's about Pierce Bronson plays a volcanologist from the United States Geological Survey, goes out there and he finds out that, hey, look, there's this volcano that everybody says is dormant, it's about to blow, and nobody believes him. So I enjoyed it as a kid for all the action sequences. And then when I got a little bit older and got a little more into history, realized that most of that script was a direct response to what had happened at Mount St. Helens in 1980. In fact, it's the eruption is mentioned several times directly during the film. So I kind of set off my interest seeing what Mount St. Helens is all about. And I also at one point had some relatives that lived in the state of Washington for about 7 or 8 years, and they were only about an hour's drive to the volcano, and they actually brought me some nice little mementos from that national park. I wish I would have had more time. I should have been smart and looked at my calendar of historical events and realized what May 18th was and been preparing for the stream far longer. I would have dug out the booklets, but alas, I didn't have time. I also got a sack of ash from the eruption, but I think just about everybody in the 1980s ended up with a memorable piece of ash from the eruption. We'll talk about more about that later. So, I guess without any further ado, let's get into let's start talking about the deeds. All right, let's see. Where can I? Yep, you might be hearing my birds downstairs. They tend to be yappers. All right, let's kick it off. Mount St. Helens. It's a volcano that exists in the Cascade Mountain Range in the northwestern United States along the Pacific coast. Mount Rainier, Mount Adam, Mount Hood, they're all part of the same Cascade Range. In fact, if you get on the peaks, one of these peaks, you can see multiple of these ridges from each other. Uh, you know, we could be here all day going into the geology, the hundreds of thousands of years that go into creating mountains, but I'm going to not go too much in detail on that. But how Mount St. Helens was created was over the phase of what geologists have discovered were 4 different eruption phases. Prior to the 1980 eruption, the last major phase was actually in the 19th century for about 50 years, from 1800 to the 1850s. St. Helens was relatively active. Do I have a painting here? Nope, not that one. Those are beautiful pictures, though. There, that'll give you that was a painting done, I think, in 1847 of one of the quote final eruptions for Mount St. Helens. So, just like a typical, I guess you want to say, the Hollywood volcano, magma pushes to the surface, lava spews out down the sides, hardens over time. That, along with ash that's spewed out, start building up the dirt, building up the sediment, and that creates those conical peaks that are so synonymous with volcanoes. And as you saw with the first image, Mount St. Helens was a beauty of a peak in the 20th century. In fact, it was deemed the Mount Fiji of Japan. Mount Fiji of Japan. Yeah, no, duh, Spencer. It's in Japan. The Mount Fiji of America. And let's move over to another image here. This is a wonderful one. This was taken, I believe, 1980 of Mount St. Helens towering over the peaks. Now, some interesting folklore. The indigenous people of the region had a story that went that Mount St. Helens was the remains of an indigenous woman who was so beautiful that actually two men fought over her. And for their, I guess you want to say, for these two men's lust and her being caught in the crossfire, all three were turned into peaks. So you had Mount St. Helens as the woman, and then Mount Adam and Mount Hood were also the peaks. Now, the European name that we now know Mount St. Helens as, it's actually named after Baron St. Helen, who was living over in England. Never saw the mountain. Probably didn't even know he had a name after him. But an explorer, Captain Vancouver, in the 1790s, named the peak after him. And of course, Captain Vancouver got two cities named after him: Vancouver, British Columbia, up in Canada, and Vancouver, Washington, in the United States, which will be important to our story. What you're looking at right now. Oh, no, we're not gonna look at that. Hey, let's look at that. We got is that Sharon? Yeah, was that Sharon? Yeah, probably. If it is, I got these wonderful tabs on. You want to learn about the war in Ukraine, possibly ending. Putin's sick with cancer and passed the what? I have no idea. I'm assuming it's clickbait. U.S. Supreme Court dismisses dispute over Title 42 border exclusions. Goodfellas actors cause of death confirmed. You know what? Let's just stop reading about the modern day fake news. Let's just go to the cool history, which is probably more we could be more confident in than that stuff. Yeah, let's keep talking about the history. So, what you're looking at now is an image of Spirit Lake, which sits at the northern foot of Mount St. Helens. Very popular vacationers. There was actually a lodge established by a World War II veteran. His name was Harry R. Truman. No relation to President Truman. He had a lodge set up there, and he spent the next 50 years of his life maintaining that lodge and entertaining guests who came to boat and swim in Spirit Lake in the shadow of America's Mount Fiji. Now, starting in 1980, things started to get a little sketchy at Mount St. Helens. The last time an eruption had occurred in the continental United States was actually, believe it or not, in California, Northern California. It was in between 1914, 1915. And though it was a moderate-sized eruption, I do not believe there were any casualties, and there were not too many to talk about. And it kind of just got forgotten in the memory. Most Americans living in the continental United States were not used to volcanoes. They just weren't a thing. Keep in mind that most active volcanoes in the United States are on the West Coast. Yes, I know Hawaii, Alaska. Remember, we're talking continental U.S. They haven't gone out and got Hawaii and Alaska yet. So, and with westward expansion, a lot of these states don't become part of the Union until the latter half of the 19th century, early 20th century. So volcanoes are this idea of things that are occurring around, in the Indian Ocean at these tropical islands. I mean, everybody knew about the Krakatoa explosion of 1883, but that was seen very far away, distant memories. Of course, the joke is that how the whole tectonic plates work in the Pacific Ocean. We have the Ring of Fire, so those volcanoes that are in the Indian Ocean and in the Pacific Ocean, yeah, they're all part of the same chain that the Cascade Mountain ranges are in. But, us Americans we didn't want to admit that. 1978, the United States Geological Survey did a survey of Mount St. Helens, and surprised a lot of people when they said this volcano right here, it can go off within the next 100 years. In fact, it can go off before the century is over. And nobody really ever considered Mount St. Helens as being a danger. Most people around did not recall ever hearing about an eruption of Mount St. Helens. They thought it was dormant. Oh boy, were they about to be in for a rude awakening. So that survey's done in 1978. Beginning in February of 1980, tremors are noticed underneath Mount St. Helens. And in March, I believe it was March, was it I think it was March 17th, 1980, there is a moderate earthquake and steam starts coming out of Mount Saint Helens. The mountain is alive. Now, when we start getting seismic activity at Mount Saint Helens in late March of 1980, the USGS did not have an office in the Cascade region. In fact, the nearest office, I believe, was either in Denver or all the way down in California. They just really did. Nobody had really considered the Cascade Mountain range as a threat. So it kind of caught everybody a little bit off guard that we're getting, I mean, they were getting, at some point, they were getting like 5 or 6 earthquakes a day in late March of 1980 coming out of Mount St. Helens. Now, people that were nearby that can go and record, see what was happening. There was a seismologist department in the University of Washington, and luck would have it that there was a USGS 40 figure at the University of Washington at the time, visiting, helping out with their programs. His name was David Johnston, and you might actually remember his name. Well, I'll show you a photograph of him later. David Johnston will be infamous for what becomes of him in the eruption. I hope I'm not giving too much away. It's history. You should know what, if you didn't know what happened to Johnston, well, you're about to find out. Johnston, experienced volcanologist, gets word that, hey, this is occurring out here. He volunteers his time, throws himself into going up to Mount St. Helens, being one of the first USGS authority figures on the scene. Because of that, he is kind of thrown into the spotlight. Most of the University of Washington folk are like, let's talk to Johnston. He's a volcanologist. He'll know more what's going on. So all of these microphones get shoved into his mouth in late March. People asking what's going on. We got earthquakes going. We got steam coming out of the mountain. And he's basically told them, well, right now we're standing on the one slope, Mount St. Helens. You're standing on a stick of dynamite. Now, Johnston would later say he didn't, he regretted saying that because it could have caused a panic. But Johnston knew that things were more dire at Mount St. Helens than the average person knew. He was actually part of that 1978 survey that deemed St. Helens to be a very active volcano and ready to go off. So he was worried. Now, there would be a lot of infighting throughout March and April of 1980 of what should be done. I think her name was her name Dixie Lee Ray, Governor Dixie Lee Ray of the state of Washington. She was, asked, well, what do we do? We're not used to handling volcano situations. Eventually, Johnston and a few others from the USGC and from the University of Washington stepped in and said, well, we got to quarantine the zone off. We don't want anybody going in here if this thing blows up. Vacation season's coming. So eventually they started agreeing upon what would be known as a red and a blue zone. The red zone would be about 5 miles around Mount St. Helens. Nobody was allowed in except proper scientists and law enforcement. And then the blue zone was allowed for logging operations. The immediate area was a big logging operation at the time. Employed several hundred people in the region. It was one of the big industries for this part of the state of Washington. Now, you probably notice what's happening in these images. The earthquake started to subside by mid to late April. Things started to get a little moderate, but notice that blister forming there on the north face of the mountain. So Johnston believed what was happening, and would be proven true what was happening, that magma was making its way up through a crack in the tectonic plate, making its way up. Now, normally it would gradually rise to the top, spew out lava, and then harden and add more onto the mountain. Well, those earthquakes must have caused a blockage in the flue going to the top of the mountain. Magma could not go directly up and gradually spew out as lava. Instead, what was happening, because of the buildup, it was starting to jut off to the side and press against the right side of the mountain. The right side of Mount St. Helens was becoming swollen. And this blister was growing 5 feet a day. And from what I've read in terms of geologists in the geologist world, that is horrifying. This should not be happening. This is a sign that something unpredictable is going to occur. Now, initially, most people complied with the evacuation orders, with the restriction orders, but as these earthquakes die down, everybody starts getting a little antsy. They want to go back, like, wait a minute, nothing's happening anymore. Looks like it's over. So I've got to backtrack a little bit. There was another incident back in the 1970s, Mount Baker, which started to show similar seismic activity. And the USGC had advised, hey, we probably should evacuate the zone. The evacuation lasted about 9 months as moderate seismic activity occurred. The mountain didn't blow up ultimately, but the local residents were furious at the USGC, saying, wait a minute, the mountain never blew. You lied to us. And USGC is like, we were just advising. We didn't tell you to evacuate. We were advising. And you followed up on that. We thank you. Them's the deeds of dealing with Mother Nature. Mother Nature cannot be predicted. So that was still resting on the conscience of a lot of people in the northwestern United States when Mount Saint Helens started showing this activity in 1980. So less than a month in, everybody's getting antsy. There's Mr. Truman. I should catch up on his story. Mr. Truman refused to leave his lodge. He was in the red zone at Spirit Lake, refused to leave the lodge. And all fairness to him, he had lived 50 years. He'd seen a lot of things happen in his life. Man was not letting go of the one thing he had left. He had lost his wife a few years earlier. The lodge was all he had left. If he was going to die there, well, by God, he was going to do it. And the state of Washington was not going to stop him. All right, let's take a brief break. Make sure everything's going on. Hey, thank you for tuning in, Wrangler. You hit hey a couple minutes ago. I understand. Maybe you'll be able. Hey, knowing me, I might be ranting long enough. I might be on by the time you get back. Unless you're going on a trip. Hopefully, if you're going on a trip, hopefully you're going somewhere cool. If you're not going on a trip, well, hopefully you're getting home so you can mellow and chill. And by the way, folks, we are also streaming on Rumble. So if you wanted to, if YouTube isn't really working out for you right now, maybe there's something wrong with maybe the feed's coming in weird. Rumble's also there. And for those on Rumble, just make sure if things aren't working on the Rumble end, you can hop over on the YouTube end. I like having the dual stream right now. That helps a lot. If one goes down, I can feel trustworthy that the other thing's happening. All right, back to the story of Mount Saint Helens. So in May, here's the photograph, by the way. That's David Johnson, who we've been talking about. So by May of 1980, things were starting to come alive again at Mount Saint Helens. That bulge is starting to grow quicker and quicker. Earthquakes are starting to occur again and again. There's some steam activity. They're starting to get on pace again. But by now, the public are tired of the restrictions. Some of them are going to be Governor Ray. I think it's Dixie Lee Ray. Yeah, it sounds right to me. Governor Ray is going to allow for some people to go into their homes, go back into the region, check things out. And by the way, as this is all current, and this is no fault of anybody but the individuals that did this, the more that the government, the more that officials gone on the air and said, please do not go around the mountain. It's very unstable. That just attracted more people. Everybody wanted to go see a volcano. Ooh, a volcano? That's not a thing we have in the United States, is it? So you had all these curiosity seekers from across the country, as far as New York, were coming out to Washington State that take photographs of the mountain, try to get a look to see the eruption, because after all, all volcanoes erupt going up, right? I know a lot of guys go and Spencer have seen the photographs of Mount St. Helens. We know it's not a normal eruption. So what ends up happening is you're going to have several people that should not be in the red zone and in the blue zone. They're out there camping, getting photographs, not allowing that government to let them stop having fun. You're also going to have official people, official spotters. And what you're seeing in this photograph of David Johnson, he is at one of those spotting locations. This is one of the 2 observation posts for the USGC. This is called Coldwater 2. It's 5 miles north of the volcano. So it's facing the side with the big bulge. And the big bulge, the battle of the bulge. Probably should do a Battle of the Bulge Uncut history. I probably can get a humble collector, one of my close friends, on. We can do a good stream about that. Okay, I'm getting distracted. So Johnson and the people at Coldwater 2 had a front row seat to the rapidly, I guess you want to say, deforming mountain. There was also Coldwater 1, which was about 8 miles north of the mountains, so several miles behind Coldwater 2. There was a ham radio operator there. His name, I believe, was Jerry Martin. We're actually going to hear a recording from Jerry Martin here shortly. So he was reporting, he was talking to Johnston. He's talking back to other people. By this point, the USGC had set up a temporary office in Vancouver, Washington. So Johnson's reporting to Martin's reporting back to Vancouver. Got that chain of command going there. And then we get to May 18th, 1980, at around 8:32 in the morning. A 5.2 earthquake is going to register on the Richter scales in the area. And what follows next would be the largest recorded landslide in human history. So, do I have this? I'm going to have to get the audio. Sheriodo. What's that? All right. So this is going to disappear. We're going to go back to it. Don't worry. We're going to go back to it. Like I said, I found that for those that are struggling with getting audio shared, you know what you do? You have to share with file only. At least I think you do. File only. Not the whole window. File only. If I can figure out how to do that. I've been doing this for several weeks now. I think I should become a pro. I got a million things going on in my mind. Where's the video? Oh, there it is. So what you're about to see is not a video. It's a series of photographs that were taken by Gary Rosenquist. I believe he was located 7 miles to the northeast of the mountain on the morning of May 28th. Now, Gary Rosenquist's series of photos is one, I think it's the only complete documentation of the landslide and of the eruption. Now, before I play this, remember, everybody thought, volcanoes, they explode up in the air, out of harm's way. Remember that bulge?
I just felt an earthquake and didn't shake it. There's a hope. Northwest side. A7AGG, W7WFP. Now we've got an eruption down here. Now we got a big slide coming off. The slide is coming off of the west slope. Now we got a whole great big eruption out of the crater. And we got another that opened up on the west side. The whole west side, northwest side, is slides down. Good going, Jerry. N7AGG, W7WFP. And you go ahead and take this one from Ty there. How about that? K7 Kansas. All right, we got it, boy. The whole northwest section and north section blown up, flying and coming up over the ridge towards me. I'm going to back out of here. I'm down 75. WB7TZF on Highway 12. Gentlemen, the camper and the car sitting over to the south of me is covered. That's going to get me too.
So what you just heard over that time lapse, you were actually hearing the voice of Jerry Martin, who I was talking about earlier. He's the ham radio operator at Coldwater 1. When the mountain goes off at 8:32, David Johnston got on the radio and famously said, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." And as the last we've ever heard from David Johnston, the pyroclastic cloud that erupted from not only the top of Mount St. Helens, but the north side completely overtook the ridge Johnston was on, and nobody ever found any remains of Johnston. Unfortunately, we don't know where his final resting place is. From there, the pyroclastic cloud made its way through Spirit Lake, dumped all of the mountainside in Spirit Lake. The cloud then moved over Johnston's Ridge, what's now Johnston's Ridge, continued. And then as Martin, he's watching all this, you just heard his recording as he's watching the mountain erupt. The pyroclastic cloud overtake Johnson Ridge, and then Martin was taken over as well. Those are the final words of Mr. Martin before his position at Coldwater 1, 8 miles away, was taken over. So keep that in mind, 8 miles away he was from the mountain, and that pyroclastic cloud moved in a matter of maybe a minute at most. It was moving at 300 miles per hour. Now let me get ready to remove this. We're going to go back to screen sharing. We're going to share the, oh, that weird. We're going to share the whole window this time. You guys do realize when you come here, you're never going to see me do a pro move, right? You're never going to see me do a pro gamer move. And that's never going to happen here. I don't have the skills for that. I was going to play that, but we already heard, we got to hear Jerry's actual sports. And these photographs that you're seeing are actually being taken from the northwestern side of the mountain, a few miles to the northwest side. They were taken by a Robert Landsberg, I believe was actually at Coldwater 1, and he was a photographer there, where Martin decided to stay in the trailer and basically just accepted what was coming. Landsberg got to his car, managed to get this series of photographs that you're seeing, and by God, horrifying. Imagine like rushing towards you. After this photograph, Landsberg dove into his car, tried to make a break for it. The pyroclastic cloud inevitably took it over, and Landsberg would lose his life as well. He wouldn't be found for several more days after the eruption. And now you're seeing this photograph here from the south side of Mount St. Helens. You're not really see, well, you can't, nobody can go over now and see what's going on the north side because it is a giant plume of superheated smoke, rock, ash, you name it. The plume reached as high as 15 miles into the air. I'm going to say that again. The plume from Mount St. Helens reached 15 miles into the air. And remember how I said this is the largest recorded landslide in history. What ends up happening is all that mountain got dumped into Spirit Lake and into nearby tributaries. All that water displaced. Now you have ice melting from the top of Mount St. Helens, melting from the steam, melting from the gases. They're going to create mud flows that are on average almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Those mud flows are coming in, mixing with all the debris. And of course, will start clogging the Tuttle River Valley. And what ends up happening is this massive floods. I believe the flooding would be up to 20 miles beyond Mount St. Helens. And this is superheated. This photograph will give you better. You can see the steam coming off of the flood-choked Tuttle River. Some campers that were in the region, they're going to be caught off. They'll hear a siren that the flood's coming. By the time they hear that siren, they're already seeing the wall of water coming toward them. And you can go, I could be here all day telling you the stories of survival that some of these campers, some of these people that were, or not even necessarily campers, just people just caught by these tidal waves of mud and logs and steaming hot water coming down through the Tuttle River Valley. Now back to this image. This was taken about 35 miles from Mount St. Helens about midday, and it is a horrifyingly awesome sight, seeing that mushroom cloud billow into the air. And just as a friendly reminder, this is what Mount St. Helens looked like before the eruption. In fact, this is taken a day before the eruption. You can see the bulge forming. It's very ugly. This is nasty. The next photo you're going to see is in the approximate location of the first one. The mountain had lost anywhere, I've heard estimates anywhere from 300 to 800 feet of its top. It had lost its entire northern side. The crater was now 3 times wider than it had originally been on top of the mountain. You can see the landscape immediately in front of it is completely charred. There is not a piece of vegetation left. Yes, I have to go to the notebook. I know, very professional. I have to go to the notebook. I'm going to give you some correct numbers. The force of the explosion was approximately 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb that fell in Hiroshima. By the way, why does all historical events have to measure the explosion power from Hiroshima? Why Hiroshima? We don't have, I mean, we're having less and less people that were alive that knew what Hiroshima would have looked like. That's not a good visual anymore. I'm using it anyways. I mean, because it's the awe factor. I'm criticizing myself as I speak. I don't know what that says about me. Anyways, about 230 square miles were devastated around the volcano. At least 68,000 acres of timber were completely torn down. I mean, these timbers completely now flat on the ground. And unfortunately, 57 people would ultimately lose their lives. And this is going to show you some of the debris in the immediate aftermath. There were, like I mentioned, several logging operations around Mount St. Helens. The blessing from this eruption is that it occurred on a Sunday. These logging operations were not in peak operations. There were a few people who had volunteered their time to get some extra pay that day, and several of those were killed in the blast. And this is showing you that I told you how the timber was just completely flattened by the explosion. And that is Mount St. Helens today. We're going to look at this photo first, though. This map shows you where all of the victims of the eruption were located. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been very worse if this had been a Monday. So it's one of them things that if there's any blessing to take away from it, it ended up on a Sunday. So you can see only a few were actually within the red zone when the blast occurred. Most of the victims were outside of the zone that was considered safe for choice people. Safe for choice people. Oh. I don't know what I'm doing now. I don't know what I'm doing now. Let me see what's going on. Anything going on? Anything? Chat have anything to say? You guys have anything? Any comments? Any way to throw mud at my face? You know, I'm putting myself in the public format. You know, you're free to do that. I'm sure I'm the second the worst streamer in the world. Not the first though, but probably the second worst streamer. In the wake of the eruption of Mount St. Helens, ash spewed from Washington State as far east as Minnesota and as far south as Oklahoma. As we mentioned, 57 people were killed. About an equal amount were directly injured as a result of the blast. Thankfully, it was not higher, but this does stand as the deadliest volcanic event in American history. This had never happened in modern America. Nobody had anticipated this happening. And a lot of scientists in the country saw an opportunity. They now had, out of this horrifying disaster, they now had the capabilities of studying volcanoes, an active volcano right in our own backyard. It only took a few years. I think it was 1983 that the Mount St. Helens Volcanic National Monument was actually designated, and all this had become a national park. On a side note, I'm a little confused. If somebody's from Washington State could explain it, I thought it was all national park property, but I'm seeing more about Washington State Park ownership over the land and national park. Couldn't really find a visitor center, like a proper national park visitor center on the map. So how is the relationship working? How is the preservation working in the region? Anyways, a lot of people preserved it basically because the government thought, well, nothing's growing here. This stuff's screwed. You know, and you saw these earlier photos. It's just a sheet of white ash, no trees. But surprisingly, by the end of 1980, there was already some vegetation growing. In this photograph, which was taken in 2012, almost over 30 years after the eruption, it's still barren, but you can see a lot of green in that photograph, more so than there was immediately after the eruption. Funny thing, the removal of trees allowed for a lot of smaller growth to explode with life. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought that an ash barren wasteland would actually become more fruitful in some ways? But indeed it is. So Mount St. Helens has now become a very interesting study in how Mother Nature, how Mother Nature can heal itself. And in addition to that, I believe they've had planted about 5 million trees. Like people have gone in and actually planted trees to help regrow the forest. But Mother Nature seems to be doing well by itself, restoring the landscape in the region. And another reason it's now preserved is just to see the awe-inspiring sight, realizing all this you're seeing here was created by Mother Nature in one brutal move on May 18th, 1980. Now, that's not where our story ends. Volcanoes don't just stop. They don't decide, okay, I did the big eruption, I'm done. They write your history books now. That's not how Mother Nature works. This here is a photograph taken in 2008. Between 2000, well, I should say first, immediately after the 1980 eruption, like 1981 throughout 1984, there were moderate, small scale eruptions of small fumes that came out of the mountain, seismic activity. And then in the early 21st century, between 2004 and 2008, there was more seismic activity and there were more moderate eruptions. Nobody was harmed in these, but this actually ended up with the creation of a brand new lava dome in the center of the crater, a brand new lava dome. And as late as 2019, I believe they've still been registering some seismic activity. So the mountain is still very much alive and very possibly could have another eruption. Now, will it be on the scale of the 1980? Hopefully not. Most of the scientists are saying likely not. The reason that explosion was so catastrophic, it was the equivalent of popping a cork off of a champagne bottle. Albeit that champagne bottle, instead of being right up in the air, was pointed 90 degrees to the side. So instead of everything going up in the air, everything was going that way. That's what led to the catastrophic explosion of May 18th, 1980. That buildup of pressure, the magma was not able to rise up to the top. Instead, it was built up, and it found a way to get out in the most violent way possible. And that's a panoramic view of the rim of the volcano today. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, back to Dante's Peak, sequences where Pierce Bronson and his crew, they're up on top, they're measuring Dante's Peak. I believe they filmed it on the rim of Mount St. Helens. And yes, with the proper permits, you too can go hike up on top of the rim of Mount St. Helens. I don't think I have the balls to do that. But if anybody in the chat does, by all means, by all means. Something else completely random. The national park includes not just the volcano itself, but it has this lava tube. They call it Ape Cave. This is called the meatball of Ape Cave. It's just this piece of rock that got stuck in between these two ledges. I don't know. I think I might want to go visit just one time just to walk through this. That just is a cool sight, thinking that's all created by lava. And that ends our story, folks. 43 years ago today, 57 people will lose their lives in the eruption of Mount St. Helens. It could have been far worse. Ultimately, what led to those deaths? Prior false alarms of volcanic activity led to people becoming upset with the USGC and other authority figures. Thankfully, it occurred on a Sunday, so few people were actually in the region, although the red zone that was designated by authority figures, by experts at the time, was grossly inadequate. But it could have been a lot worse. And the eruption has led to a complete re-understanding, at least for the United States, on how volcanoes work, how tectonic plates work. Like I said before this, they had the red zone at 5 square miles. Clearly, it was not big enough, but they were working with the information they had available to them at the time. This provided new information that can be hyper-analyzed with present-day technology and completely redefine how we understand volcanoes. In fact, because of the Mount Saint Helens eruption, people like the USGC have been able to establish satellite warnings that can take satellite readings of these mountains and notice if they start not looking right from the skies and stuff. We probably should look down at that very quickly. We don't have to just look through, photographs of film being developed anymore. So, we have learned from history. We have learned from Mount St. Helens. And to wrap up, 10 ways Mount St. Helens changed our world. Number 1, people gained a profound appreciation for the destructive power of volcanoes. Number 2, officials pioneered new ways to reclaim communities from volcanic ashfall. Number 3, communities learned that a day-long eruption could, in fact, affect rivers decades later. Scientists discovered that nature recovers quickly, building new and thriving habitats. Congress preserved a unique volcanic landscape to explore and learn from. Scientists and public officials have become better prepared to face volcanic threats. A new generation of volcanologists emerged around the world. Scientists gained insight into the geologic history of Mount St. Helens. Scientists have a better grasp of cascade volcano hazards and eruption frequency. A technological revolution sparked new ways to monitor volcanoes and provide hazard warnings. All right, and like I said, that is the story of Mount St. Helens. Raven, 43 years ago. Jeez, I'm old. There, I can put that on. Does that make you feel better, Raven? This probably is not making you feel better, isn't it now? Ooh. Mistaken to be snow, ended up all the way over California. Indeed, indeed. Now, as we start winding down here on our stream, I have a couple questions. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do a proper poll on this. Just post it either in the chat or in the comments below. I might put a proper poll for this on the community page after I'm done streaming. I'm going to be doing this on Thursdays. That's when Uncut History will go on. That's for certain. But I need to ask you, the viewers, what time in the evening you feels best? I can work anywhere from 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time all the way through about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when I'm available. So Eastern Standard Time I'm working with. I've been doing 6:30 typically. I've tried 7:30 as well. Leave me in the comments know, is there a certain time that you feel would be best for me to go live between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? So think about that. Leave me know in the chat or in the comments section. And if not now, I'm going to put probably a poll up later on in the community page on the YouTube. The reason I ask is because right now I'm noticing the numbers tick up very quickly on the on the live stream. And by the way, thank you for joining in. If you've just joined in, we just finished up telling the story of Mount St. Helens. If you weren't able to hear me go through and bumble my way, congratulations, you didn't have to bumble my way through. I'm actually going to suggest you better sources that'll tell you this information and probably more clear. But if you do want to go back and rewatch it once it's over, I greatly appreciate if you go to the live stream. Now, what I end up reading this week to get more into this story, it's best, I've always said, it's best to get into something you don't know about, get into a personal story. I was reading Deep Dive into Nebraska's Water Resources. No, that's not what I was reading. Those that know will know why I'm reading about the state of Nebraska right now. Okay. A Hero on Mount St. Helens, The Life and Legacy of David S. Johnson. It's by Melanie Haynes and Jeff Remar. I've been using it through my college library. I didn't get to read all of it, just the part about Mount St. Helens, but it gets a lot more into Johnston and how he was trying to monitor the volcano, his theories on it. It was going to be a lateral explosion instead of vertical, and how those theories proved to be true. There's actually a fun tidbit where he went out to dinner one day in Vancouver, he and another friend of his. They said what they essentially did was because they were both not in an angry manner, but they were both constructively debating back and forth. No, it's going to erupt. No, it's not going to erupt. It's going to erupt lateral. No, it's not. So when I signed the checks, apparently his friend wrote, "No, it's not" on his name on the check, where Dave wrote, "Yes, it is" on his check. So, got to have fun sometimes in these situations. Got to have fun in the field that you're making a career off of. So definitely check that book out. I'm definitely, hopefully, I can get a physical copy of it and I'll read it the whole way through. David Johnson, I've known his name for a while. He's probably the most famous name attached to Mount St. Helens because, well, he died as a result of the explosion. Um, but I was interested to find learn about him. I also was using the United States Geological Survey website, and I actually have a link in the description below for the 10 things learned from Mount St. Helens, so you can go read all about the 10 things we have apparently learned from it. Hopefully we have learned. I like to think we learned from history, right, guys? Right? Okay, so tonight was weird. I had to go pick up an order, so I was late. Oh, you're fine, you're fine. And hello, Jonathan Rosendahl. Thank you for tuning in. You're nocturnal. Lately I've been noticing when I've been working on my finals right now in college. And for a while I've been kind of beating myself over the head, like, you gotta work on it during the day, don't work on it during the night, you go do the fun stuff at night. But then I've been noticing, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm always up late at night. Like, it's not because I'm like forcing myself to, I'm just naturally productive, like in late evening, nighttime hours. So I think it's maybe best that I just go forward, do a lot of my important work, in the evening. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but for whatever reason, my brain works the most clear. Maybe it's because by then I've kind of shooken out all my distractions. I'm, tired enough to just be compliant, I guess. I don't know. This is just something I've noticed. I don't necessarily give an advice. I've just noticed that lately. Now, before we finish up the stream, what I always like to do is to shout out a new piece to our culture, as a culture is in, I guess, all of us here on the internet, all of us human beings stuck on this rock, this barren wasteland that we're stuck on. So, what we're going to be talking about this week, we're going to be talking about something that's going to be coming out in August, actually, but there's some stuff already on it. And that is going to be whenever I hit the share thing. Where's the share thing? The share thing. Oh, I do this. So, we're going to be talking about the Venus Spectacular. No, it's not a race. So, the Venus Spectacular, it's available on Substack right now. It is written by Nyanzi. Raul Nyanzi. I am probably mispronouncing that. I'm a Yinzer. I butcher the English language, let alone our languages. So take that how you will with a pinch of salt. But Raul Nyanzi has been working on the Venus Spectacular. It's an interesting story. It's going to be kind of like a sci-fi, I'd say sci-fi fantasy story almost set on the planet Venus. And from the little bit I've been reading about what it is essentially that in this world, a group of witches came down to Earth. They're like alien witches. They came down to Earth, gave human beings like all this new technology, all this new knowledge, but also in some cases brutally enslaved humanity and killed a lot of us off. Eventually, humans found a way to rebel back and drove these witches off of Earth. Now, one particular witch was remorseful for what had been done to the humans, so took a group of followers to Venus, and now the humans are coming for her. And that is the story of the Venus Spectacular. In fact, we will play the little video here. I don't think you'll be able to hear the audio. If you do, great. If you don't, Japanese. Raul Nianzi seems to have wants to make this almost very, maybe make it very, I want to say light novel esque. I want to say anime esque, and it's not animated. Nope. Oh, nope. Didn't stop playing. Okay, we're going. The final witch hunt begins. Yes, begin the final witch hunt has. The Venus Spectacular, Legend of the Final Witch Hunt. So what Raul Nienzi has actually done, and you can already go to his Substack. So the first proper installment's not coming out till August, but until then, he's actually set up a lot of lore building, talking about, how do we get to the Venus witch hunt. And there's what I said. He has a lot of stuff written in Japanese. It's for the aesthetic, from what I can gather. It's an interesting aesthetic. I'm not complaining. So it's like a Japanese published source, but it's been translated to English. It's like, I believe that's like how it's intended to be. A coven of witches who helped save planet Earth from the machines did their part to rebuild it. They brought prosperity out of privation and made once shattered nations whole again. But they purchased their powerful magic as a terrible price. The witches sacrificed children to a dark god, convinced that it was the correct path forward. When their mutant servants learned of this atrocity, they rose up in revolt. In 90 minutes, the mutants slew all the witches, and the mutants took charge, determined to purge the earth of evil by any means necessary. History would call this event the 1 hour massacre. Well, it's like the hour and a half massacre, but 1 hour sounds cooler. But one witch escaped to Venus with 10,000 of her subjects, all determined to seek redemption. They built a society that they could be proud of, a society that has survived for over a century and a half and continues to grow. So, I am excited for this. I like this story. I like this idea of witches, alien witches running off. So, what I'm going to do right now I should be doing it for the Rumble, but I can't. I don't think can I do both? Let's see. Does it go to both? Hopefully. Okay, I tried to send to both. Hopefully did. If not, be sure to go to Substack, look up the Venus Spectacular. Be sure to follow it and get ready for the first proper installment in August. I am hyped. And Raven Nevermore has since posted, looking back on things, my life has had a lot of history that's changed the way we do things. Mount Saint Helens, Challenger explosion, Kansas City firefighters getting blown up in a toxic explosion. Is that Kansas City? Wait, what's that one? What's that one? You're going to tell me about that one. I would like to talk about that. I do not know what that is, but I'm willing to learn. So, Raven Evermore, you know how to send me information through the guild. It is the best way. Please tell me more about that. I'm assuming it's Kansas City or KC firefighters. Let's just go with that. So, I want to learn about that. So, thank you guys for watching this week of Uncut History. Right now, I've taken a brief hiatus from making regular videos. They'll be back in June. I got content saved up for my Gettysburg trip last month. I just do not have the time to edit it until we get to June. Finals season, it's grind mode, baby. No, not that grind mode. I mean, college grind mode. So in the intermediate time, be sure to go for my back catalog of videos. I got videos on American Civil War history, French and Indian War history. I got videos on industrial history. I love talking about railroads on here. And there will be more videos like it in the near future. I'll be trying to do Uncut History in the intermediate time, however, keep something on the channel every Thursday. It seems like the later might be better. So I might be pushing start time a little bit later, which is fine by me. I want to make sure that I can get people to tune in live. So there are a couple ways you can support the channel. Number one is by subscribing to Readout Productions. Subscribe to the channel right now, be it here on YouTube or on Rumble. And, the subscribe button's right down there, My dogs are going off. Normally that means the cats are by the stairwell, but actually both cats are over here. Can't you see them? Say hi to the chat. Say hi to the channel. Say hi to the channel, Fred. Ash is back there too. So, I don't know what's going on down there. So, number one, subscribe to the channel. Two, actually, this should have been really number one. Like the video. See, my brains are rattled now. My brains are rattled. Be sure to like this video. Let YouTube and Rumble know that you like these videos. You want to see more like them. So hit the button. Hit the button. There you go. You hit the button. And if you want to go the extra mile and support me, you can buy me a cup of coffee by giving me a donation through Ko-fi. The link is in the description below. Well, you know what this means. The music's about to play. It's time to hopefully playing the music. Here we go. The music's playing, right? Yep, it's playing. I hear it. I almost thought about playing the main theme of Dante's Peak. Man, I love the theme song of Dante's Peak. It's so foreboding. But, copyright. They don't want to get copyrighted. I might actually go watch it after this. No. I gotta work on college work. Gotta work. Don't get distracted. Don't get distracted. I guess I should keep playing the music. I was muting myself. I'm like, oh wait, I'm muting the music. It's a cool song. Come on, it's a cool song. I like listening to it. John comes marching home. So it's a bop. It's a bop. All right, folks, this is for real this time. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next Thursday. It'll be a preservation shout out. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.